And that goes back to the point you were making too. Normally, your tourniquet's on your vest when it's in the car. You have it in the glove box. It was not on your vest that night, was it?
No, it was not. So as soon as I got shot and Miles was returning fire over my head, I thought, man, I got to get out of here because I didn't know if crossfire was happening. I had no idea. So I hobble out. I fall between two cars because I stepped off a curb in my left, and I just out of habit stepped on my left leg, and it had no, the muscles weren't working, and I went down between these two cars and I butt scooted back. And the whole time I'm yelling at the other guys that had ran from the door to get behind cover. I said, I need a tourniquet. I need a tourniquet. I've been hitting my femoral. And I kept yelling that because when I first went behind that door, I stuck my left hand down on my thigh, and I've seen plenty of people shot. I've seen plenty of leg wounds. And when I felt that pool of blood in my hand, I knew it was different. I thought, oh man, I just got shot in my artery. That's the first thing that went through my head. So I thought, I got to get off my feet because I'm pumping blood and I got to get a tourniquet on this thing.
Welcome to Game of Crimes.
So let's stop there for a second because I want to add a little bit more context. How were you dressed that night? What things identified you as a cop?
So I had on plain clothes, but we had our police vest on that said police on the front, police on the back. Yeah, that was one of the huge things. Oh, they were in just regular clothes. Well, sure we were, but we also had an outer carrier over that said police, which is more identifiable than a guy in uniform, in my opinion. You got the little bitty badge here; it doesn't say police on it. So we were all vested up, proper protocol there. And when that door came open, aside from him hearing, aside from seeing us, I don't know what more he needed to visualize that we were the police.
And when you moved to the right, and if you were standing where Kenneth Walker was and you were looking forward, would you have been able to see the vest and the word police where you were
Yes,
at?
yes, absolutely. Well, we were in there was a s- a porch light out where we were, so I'm assuming we were lit up enough to see it. I can't verify it. Maybe
What
when
was
I
the
turned with my
lighting?
flashlight, it was dark in the house. The
Okay.
only thing I could see was the ambient blue light coming from the TV in their bedroom. So maybe he couldn't see us. I always try to give him the benefit of the doubt. I honestly do, because maybe when my light came around to his eyes, he couldn't see us. I have no idea. Um, but the fact that him saying he did not hear we were the police is just, there's no way. There's just no way possible.
Well, you've got the boom of the breaching tool, the ram, hitting the door, plus you got people yelling police. So I'm not trying to be flippant, but there's no indication that this guy was deaf, was he?
No, no, not at all.
Okay. So when you said you saw that gun and then the shots fired, what happens? What happens at that point?
Well, I immediately returned four shots. So as soon as mine hit, the action reaction, there's that little bit of gap, but I immediately returned four shots. And as I'm doing that, Kenneth Walker, where he was standing, there was an insert in the wall that led to a second bedroom. And as soon as he shot, he dove left and left Brianna in the hallway. Well, she attempted to follow him into that room. And when she did, she ran into the path of the bullets because her feet, from where she was originally standing to where her feet are in the photographs of the crime scene, they are almost out of the way. She almost made it. There, her feet are halfway into the area that we couldn't see down the hall, and then she fell back. Um, so the cowardice of him to number one, if he thought he was getting home invaded, why wouldn't you tell her to stand there and call 911? We were at the door for a
Or
minute.
stand in front of her?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Instead, he chose the easy way out, shot, dove behind a wall, and left her unfortunately there because she grew up in a horrible environment. Her dad was in prison. Her mom didn't raise her. Her grandma did. Her grandma's dead now, so I'm sure she's like every other woman we see out here that these dope dealers take advantage of, where they come in, they see these women that have these issues, and they want to be their hero. They throw money at them, they throw quote love at them, but they have four other women they're loving, and they use them, and that's what was happening here.
Yeah. What else could explain the fact is that she had a current boyfriend, but Glover is still coming over there doing packages with her. She's bonding him out. I mean, you hate to say it, but when you know this too, you go to domestic violence incidents and stuff. There are some women who are more afraid of being alone than they are being abused, and so they're willing to put up with the abuse. And I remember a couple times getting attacked myself when we went to arrest the husband,
Mm.
and I get attacked by the wife
Oh, yeah.
because
Domestics are dangerous. Yeah. Horrible.
one of the worst things. Well, this is kind of that domestic. So, are you the first one in the door then when this happens? The breacher stands back, and you're the first one in the door.
Yeah. And none of us ever made it across the threshold because as soon as I stepped in the threshold, that's when the shots began. I got off 4 rounds. I got behind the door because, you're trained, shoot, get off center. So I went to the left, got behind the door frame, came back around and shot into the door frame where he dove into. Um, Unfortunately, I mean, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, we missed him. I wish we hadn't. I wish he'd been shot, and not her, since he's the one that shot. But that's just the way it is. To go back to Brianna, I do think she was a victim in some of this by the guys who she surrounded herself with. But at the same time, they put this picture of her as an award-winning EMT, right? Well, she never even got out of training phase. She was not an award-winning EMT. She was in training phase, and there's a lot of things that I can't disclose, that the reason she was fired. She got fired from that job, put on the no rehire list. Um, During the period that she was an EMT, she had rented a vehicle, and there was a dead body found that had been shot in the head, found in that car. She claimed the car was stolen, didn't know anything about it, even though that guy was part of their circle that they ran around with. So a lot of things that she put herself in very, very bad situations, poor decisions that led us down this path.
Look, anytime there's a loss of life, you don't want that to happen. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes, as they say in war, the enemy gets a vote. Sometimes the bad guy gets a vote. It's not always goes that way. And again, the purpose of this is not to try and paint Breonna Taylor into a corner and say, well, she's bad. Might have very well been a good person. I know nothing about her. I'm not trying to claim things, but I think that, again, this goes back to context. We have to understand context. At some point, though, you're an adult. At some point, you are making adult decisions. At some point, you have to decide, do I stay involved in this kind of stuff, or do I extricate myself from this? And if your choice is not to leave, if your decision is to make no decision, you've still made a decision because you're continuing to place yourself in that situation. And and I know, Murph, we were talking about this. What happens to cartel members, dope dealers, gangsters? They either die or they go to prison. There is
Right.
no retirement program in this business.
Right, and there's one thing that I hope our listeners will get your book, John, and read your side of the story. It's one of those books that once you start reading, you can't put it down. It's just what you've gone through, and we're going to get through some of that here. But right at the beginning, when you start talking about Brianna, and you say this several times throughout the book, she is a victim. It's a shame that she was killed that night because she wasn't armed. But as we also talk about Morgan, we try to teach our children this. There are consequences for every decision you make, good or bad. And unfortunately, she was victimized not by the Louisville police, not by you guys, but by Kenneth Taylor, by Jamarcus Glover, by all the other criminals that are associated with Glover's association or organization there. So that's like you said, Morgan. We're not here to criminalize Brianna.
Nope.
We just want both sides of the story heard because that's not what happened in Louisville, Kentucky after this incident.
Well, and I think the crime is it's been a one-sided narrative about a lot of stuff, and that's we're about. Look, hey, we've had bad guys on this podcast. We've had
Mhm.
people who have done. Look, George Young, there's no doubt he probably killed a couple folks. You
Mhm.
had Kenneth Ryjock, you had Luis Navia. We've had people who are legitimate OGs and bad guys on here, and we don't give them a break. Michael Franzese, Capo Regime with the Colombo crime family.
Mhm.
Um, but the one thing in common they all have, they say, look, we made poor decisions and we paid for it. They did their time, they go to prison. And so all we want to do is put out the information, give the facts. So let's go back to that for a second because um, you just weren't shot at. You ended up getting shot.
Yeah. So it went through my left thigh and tore through the femoral artery. Thank God they had a tourniquet on scene and were able to. Somebody actually paid attention during training.
And that goes back to the point you were making too. Normally, your tourniquet's on your vest when it's in the car. You have it in the glove box. It was not on your vest that night, was it?
No, it was not. So as soon as I got shot and Miles was returning fire over my head, I thought, man, I got to get out of here because I didn't know if crossfire was happening. I had no idea. So I hobble out. I fall between two cars because I stepped off a curb and I just out of habit stepped on my left leg, and it had no, the muscles weren't working, and I went down. between these two cars, and I butt scooted back. And the whole time I'm yelling at the other guys that had ran from the door to get behind cover. I said, I need a tourniquet. I need a tourniquet. I've been hitting my femoral. And I kept yelling that because when I first went behind that door, I stuck my left hand down on my thigh, and I've seen plenty of people shot. I've seen plenty of leg wounds. And when I felt that pool of blood in my hand, I knew it was different. I thought, oh man, I just got shot in my artery. That's the first thing that went through my head. So I thought I got to get off my feet because I'm pumping blood and I got to get a tourniquet on this thing.
Where was the wound? Give us an idea between the knee and the crotch there. Where were you hit at?
It went through my left front pocket because I had a front pocket wallet, and that actually diverted it just enough to not hit my femur bone, which could have splintered and, retracted that artery up into my hip. So it was pretty high. Um, about it was crotch level is what it was, just to the left of it. And so
That's a tough place for a wound too. When you talk about putting a tourniquet on, man,
oh, it
that
had to
is
go all the way
you're
up. It was all the
yeah.
way up in the crease of my leg. And yeah, because so the bullet itself didn't really hurt. It was, I guess, from ripping through the nerves. It was in my groin area and my lower back on that side, because I thought a bullet was lodged in there. And while they're putting this tourniquet on, I said, get a knife and cut my pants to make sure you're high enough, because I thought there was another wound because the pain didn't hurt where the bullet hole was.
Did
And
you immediately know you'd been shot, or did it take a couple
oh
seconds to
no, I knew
register?
immediately. Yeah, it
Okay.
was instant. Felt like a little sledgehammer hit my leg, and it did. Like I said, it didn't really hurt. It just my leg kind of went out. It quit working. The muscle did. Um, so my lieutenant was the first one to grab my vest and pull me out. He didn't have a tourniquet on him either, and lucky lieutenant even has a gun on him. But he grabbed his belt off, his regular belt. And again, that doesn't work like the movies, man. There was so much blood. The other guy came up and was stepping on my leg, pulling it, and it was still coming out. So finally, the guy with the tourniquet came up. They got it out. They got it on, and they got it stopped. And let me tell you, I would take getting shot in my leg again over having to wear that tourniquet again for 35, 40 minutes. I think it was 42 minutes is what I wore it. Horrible pain. That tourniquet is no joke, man. That's the worst pain I've ever had in my life.
But pain is a diagnostic tool. It means you're still alive.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Because
When
my
the
thought
pain
was get a tourniquet on so I live, and then get me to the hospital so I save my leg. That was my thought process this whole time.
And two people I want to point out here. One was Tony James. He's the guy that provided the tourniquet and applied it, right?
Yes.
And Miles,
Excellent.
you mentioned Miles Cosgrove, who actually protected you after you'd been shot, right?
Correct.
Stepped over on top of you and started laying down cover fire to get you out of there.
Yeah, and that poor guy's been through it since then. Demonized, got fired from his job for it, which is what we're trained to do. It's just ridiculous the pawns they treat police officers as.
Yeah, yeah. All
Okay,
right, sorry.
so the minute you're hit, you come down, you're hit, but you return 4 shots before you're out of action, right?
Six total, four
6 total?
immediately, jump
Okay.
behind the thing, come out. So, but the six were within like probably 2 seconds, 2 or 3 seconds, very quick.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then you're getting extricated out, you're going back out, and now you've got other officers returning fire. So where's everybody else at in relation to you now? You got somebody firing over your head.
Right.
What happens?
So Brett had come up behind Miles when the shot took place. He actually saw the flash of the first shot, Brett Hankinson. When he did that, he realized he could not get to the door to be of any help because I was there, Miles was there. He immediately, instead of going and just hiding behind a car, he went around the front. And as he's coming around the front, that's when Miles is laying his barrage of shots down because he unloaded his whole magazine of 16 rounds. So uh, he's doing that as I'm leaving. Well, as soon as I hit the sidewalk, which had only been, I don't know, 6 seconds total from the time it started, seven maybe, Miles was done. There was like a half a second pause, and as I'm falling between these cars, I hear Brett starting to shoot, and in my mind, I'm going, "Holy crap, they're still shooting!" That's what I thought. Even though it was very quick, because you could hear it was different shots because the echo from underneath that stairway and in that hallway, as opposed to outside to the right. So I knew it was different guns going off, but I didn't know exactly what was going on because I was on my butt. But it was over by the time before I even got to the end of the car, the shots were over. And that's where we get the title of the book, 12 Seconds in the Dark. From that very first, from the time the door comes open to that last shot ends, was no more than 12 seconds. And that was just a very hectic, um, you know, even though it went quick, It was very slow. It's hard to describe how it is that everything just kind of slowed down, and I recorded everything in my brain. I remember what people said, because I remember right after Brett shot, he got on the radio and said, they've got a long rifle. And I'm laying there as they're cranking this tourniquet. And I yelled back and said, no, it was a pistol, because that's all I saw. Now, I never got to her, even though they were overlapping. My field of vision never focused on her. I got to her, but didn't look at her. So I don't know if she ever had a gun, because here's the thing. After this shooting, Walker heard the sirens from the police because they responded fairly quick. He still didn't call 911. He would not surrender. He called his mother first. Then he called 911 over 6 minutes after the shooting. Then he called Breonna's mother. Almost 17 minutes later, he finally comes out. And when he does come out, he blames Breonna for shooting. He said it was her that shot.
Uh,
Okay, so let's take a time out here for a second, because the thing that pokes a hole right away, if I'm listening to this, see, Murph and I kind of have a system worked out too. I mean, I do. He'll read the book. A lot of times, I'm listening to this for the first time. And so I do it for a couple reasons. Number one, Murph sees some things that I don't see, but I hear some things. And the thing I heard is, if it was true what Kenneth Walker said, he said he didn't know it was the police, then why didn't he, the minute he knew that it was the police, say, hey, stop, I'm unarmed, I quit. I call 911. You got to get some help in here for Breonna. Why does he do everything but call for help? I mean, he calls the mother. He, like you say, he doesn't give up. He knows it's the police. How does he know it's the police and not a dope dealer? Because he's refusing to come out when being given lawful commands.
Right. Oh, yeah,
well,
100%.
not
They
only
threw,
that, Morgan. Not only does he call his mother, he tells her the police are here. And that was based on a statement made to another police officer who happened to live in that apartment complex. Is that correct?
yeah, not only did he live in the apartment complex, he was the courtesy officer there. He went to junior high school and high school with Kenneth Walker. They're still friends. He knows Kenneth's mother. He's been to their house. When he heard the shots, he turned his radio on and heard a police was shot. He threw his uniform on and came outside and was standing on perimeter because all the chaos was over at this point. I was already gone. Kenneth Walker's mom shows up because he called her. She showed up to the scene. She sees this guy she knows, Donovan Duncan. She approaches him and says, this was his statement in our public integrity under oath. He said she told him, uh, Kenneth called. She said, I don't know what's going on. Kenneth called and said, they're at the door. She said, I said, who's at the door, baby? He said, it's the police. I got to go, and hung up. Now,
So he had made a call during the time that you were knocking on the door before
That's what
entry was made?
that's what we don't know, and let me explain why we don't know it. So, Brianna had a phone on her when she died. Kenneth had a phone on him when he came out. There's a third phone on the nightstand. When they got that, they couldn't get in the passcode of it. The FBI took it and did whatever they do with it. They won't give us any of the information that's on it. They won't tell us what happened. So, our people only had the numbers of the two phones they had. They did
Wait a minute. The
yes.
Bureau gets involved in this, seizes one of the phones, and will not give you evidence for a criminal investigation
Yeah,
that you guys need?
correct. And
It's a
so,
it's a whole cluster.
oh yeah, the FBI in this is just a joke. I mean, it's sad the way things turn out. Um, so the two phones that they did find, that LMPD took and the Attorney General, they obviously did the tolls on those phones and found out the order of these phone calls, just like Kenneth said, on those phones. Boom, boom, boom. You see the three calls on there. And it looked like even on the third call, when he talked to Brianna's mother, that his mom three-wayed in. So they had this 2.5 minute conversation. What were they doing? Maybe given the narrative. I have no idea what they were doing. It sounds like they were setting a narrative up to me. Oh, I didn't know where they were the police. Just say that. How are they going to prove it? Which is true. How are you going to prove it? So when that happens, they get me to the hospital. They take me back to surgery. It was a 5.5 hour surgery to repair this. Um, and I wake up, and I remember waking up, and I didn't know if anybody had been shot. And I looked at my wife and went, was anybody else hit? Because I had no idea. And she's like, yeah, a female was hit in the apartment. She died. And my heart just sunk, because as a cop, your worst fear is always shooting an innocent person or shooting at someone who deserves it and hitting someone in the background, something to that degree. And that's what I felt at that moment. And it was like, my goodness, I just did the one thing I feared my whole career. It wasn't criminals I feared, it wasn't getting shot I feared. It was this that I feared that just took place. And I remember just those emotions coming over, and it was not a good feeling.
But did you know at the time when you fired, did you have an idea where your shots went?
They felt like they went straight, and the holes in the wall are right where he was standing. And some of his statements, like he said, after she got shot, I took her hand and helped her to the floor. No, he didn't. He'd be dead because those holes were right where he was standing. Between there's three in the wall and two in the door frame. So had he done the things he said, plus he had no blood on him. He comes out and he has no blood on him, and there was blood everywhere. So if you cradled her and held her and sat with her till she
Yeah.
passed, you'd have blood on you. So he's just a liar. He's a coward and he's a liar, is what he is.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is that when this shooting goes on, you don't really end up executing the search warrant at this point, right? Now, everything stops, right?
Correct. So the scene's frozen. Our public integrity comes out, who investigates crimes and police shootings, and they took over the scene. They write their own search warrant for the the uh, the evidence. They come in, they bring our crime scene unit in, they collect ballistics, they take photos, they run run the polls to see the angles of the bullets. They do all the things they do on a crime scene. Um, they said they went through a few drawers and stuff looking just to see. I'm not sure what they were looking for, but if you've you've done dope warrants, when you search, you search. You look under mattresses, you look up in crawl spaces, you look.
Everywhere.
Yeah, you look everywhere because they've gotten so ingenious on hiding this stuff, and none of that took place. And at 7:30 in the morning, when Public Integrity released this scene, one of the narc detectives said, "Okay, they're done. Can we go back to the scene now and do this warrant? The whole reason we were here." And it ran up the chain of command, and they were told, "No, you're done for the day. It's over."
How high did that go?
I think only to the major, the division level. I think it was just a bad call. I don't think there was any ill intent behind that one. I think it was just a
That's
long,
a bad
crazy night
decision.
that somebody made a mistake.
Damn.
Yeah, horrible. That's why you're there. Just finish what you're doing, man. It's not that hard.
And you know what? I mean, especially when there's a police involved shooting and an unintended person is killed, as in this case, you have got to cross every freaking T and dot every I just to avoid what is going on now.
Well, listen to this one, man. Listen to this, Murph. So in our public integrity unit, it's filled with sergeants, and then you've got lieutenant and major. And a new sergeant had just gone up to this unit who didn't have investigative skills, and this is her first case. That's who they assigned this case to, not their seasoned detectives, not the guys who were squared away, but this new person, first case. Here, this is yours. Have at it. And so there were just so many little mistakes made along the way that when they add up, it looks horrible. It really
And it
does.
all compounds each
It
other.
does.
It just
It
keeps growing
does.
and growing.
It's very frustrating once you're on the other side looking at it going, you got to be kidding me. How can this take place? How could you not follow up on that statement by the officer that said mom said he was at the door? How can you not pull her phone records to see what other phones called her? This just makes no sense to me.
Anybody who's got a connection to this case now gets a warrant. You either get voluntary cooperation or you get a warrant. You start seizing everything because the thing is, everything now becomes material to the investigation of the case. Statements that are made, calls that are made, texts that are made, whatever it is, right? You've got to. Uh, anyway, I'm preaching to the choir here. Let's get back to the case real quick. You're out of there pretty quickly after the shots end, right? So from the time you're shot until the time you're thrown into an ambulance and taken to the hospital, how long of a time is that?
Oh man, it seemed like an eternity, probably 10 minutes, because EMS wouldn't come up on the radio. These young guys, I was afraid that was going to happen. Never answered the radio, and so they're less than a half mile away. They
Well, and
finally
you said they would. Why wouldn't they answer the radio?
when I pulled up, here's what was taking place. When I couldn't get their attention, the driver had some headphones on, watching something on his phone. The passenger was watching some movie on his phone, and so I don't know if they were so enthralled in what they were doing. I have no idea, but less than a half mile away, and you know they take 10 minutes to get there. Well, the good thing about the delay, though, there's God works things out crazy ways. So when these guys get me in the ambulance, they're standing there. Both of them are you. They're pale. Their eyes are big. You got a black guy and a white guy, but they're both just like, holy crap, what's going on? Tony James, the guy we talked about earlier, that had the tourniquet, jumped in the back of the ambulance to ride down with me. He looks at him and goes, "We're just sitting there after I'm in," and they're going. He said, what do y'all want me to do? You want me to drive or something?" And the white kid went, "No, I got this." He's like, he didn't want nothing to do with it. So he jumps in the driver's seat and we start to leave. Well, then the black guy's standing there and he looks at him and he goes, "What do you need help with?" Because he's doing nothing. He went, I can't find my big gauze." And I'm thinking, "You're big. You don't need a gauze. I'm already wrapped up and all this stuff. Just give me pain meds. Do something. Take my blood pressure. Do anything. Just act like you know what you're doing." Well,
Are
about
these guys were these guys allegedly EMTs or paramedics or
well,
what?
they were just so there's like 3 levels of EMT. They're the lowest, like life-saving skills. They get basically got what cops got,
Yeah,
CPR.
yeah.
There you go. And so, but again, the delay was a fortunate thing. Kind of like the guy showing up in the car that was the only one that said we knocked and announced was all of a sudden the EMS stops, the back doors open, and it's 2 paramedics from the fire department. And I knew one of them. They jump on board, man. They go to work. They knew what they were doing. They pushed the other guy out of the way and said, "Here, just take our times." So none of these guys touched me. Okay. They never put a finger on me. They never helped me. They didn't even help me get in the EMS. Because when they finally got me to the EMS, he was pulling the gurney out of the back and I grabbed it and pushed it back in and said, "We don't need this now." I mean, they were lost. And so I get in there. He don't touch me. About 6 months later, if even that, the black EMT writes a big Facebook post saying, had he known he was saving the life of this evil person, he wouldn't have done it.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and I'm like, dude, you didn't save me. You never put a finger on me. So it just goes to show you the mentality
Not
of it.
even that statement. The point is you take an oath. Can you imagine if you written a post that said, "Look, if I known they were gonna be black or if I known they were gonna be Asian, I wouldn't have saved their
Yeah,
life." How
yeah.
would that have gone over from a police officer saying that?
Well, the good thing is he had left EMS because not good at it.
He obviously wasn't cut out for it,
He
yeah.
was, but he
Yeah.
was working at an emergency room as whatever they're called, an assistant down there, and so there was enough people that called, and he lost his job over that one.
What
Well,
an
that's
idiot.
antithetical to the medical creed too. It's
Right.
like you're there to save lives. You're not there to pass judgment.
Right. Right. What a jackass. He's just jumping on the bandwagon.
Well,
Yeah, that was
see,
it.
that's the thing is everybody wants their 15 seconds of fame and 15 minutes of fame on the backs of the people who went through the incident. But let's continue on. You're out of there like in 10 minutes. When you find out you go through surgery, you wake up and you find out about Breonna Taylor. But how long does it take you for you find out that it was not your shot?
Oh, that wasn't until a year later, almost a year later, when the AG's office finally came out with their ruling, and I think was it September?
So
Um,
you're sitting there for a year not knowing.
Correct. Yeah, and the bad thing about not knowing is like we're used to most things in life, right? We can handle it, we can figure things out, but that feeling of the unknown, waiting for that hammer to drop is the worst feeling in the world. But then even when that was over, the DOJ and the FBI continued theirs until what 2 months ago. So over 2 years they investigated before they finally decided what they were going to do.
Well, let's not hop to that yet.
Yeah.
Let's work our way up into it. So let's go back to the hospital. What? Let's start talking about the aftermath now of the shooting. She's dead, and obviously things start happening. You have protests start happening. You have lawyers start getting involved. Um, I mean, some bad stuff starts happening in Louisville.
So initially, so this happened on Friday the 13th. It was a full moon. But also on that 13th is the day that the nation basically shut down because of COVID. So I'm sitting back at home as I'm recovering thinking, man, this is horrible. Because when it first happened, black female, white cop, unarmed, I thought, oh crap. Because you know as well as I do, ever since George Floyd, what do? When there's a shooting, we don't go, man, was it a good shoot? Is everybody okay? No, we go, were they black or white? Which is dumb. It's stupid. It shouldn't matter. It should just be, was it a good shoot or bad shoot, period. But we've been so conditioned to that with this environment that when that came out, when they said that, I thought, oh man, this ain't going to end well. But then when COVID became so dominant and the president was on every day and our governor and mayor and all that, it kind of got pushed aside. And I thought to myself, maybe we got lucky on this one. I mean, maybe this one's just going to kind of skate. But then Ahmaud Arbery happened in April and Ben Crump got on that case. Well, the way it works out, one of her family's attorneys had interned with Ben Crump in law school and knew him. So she reached out to him and said, "Hey, Brianna's not getting any attention here. Can you help us? Well,
Who's
naturally, he saw
she?
dollar signs. What's that?
Who is she? Who is she?
Uh, she works for Sam Aguiar in his office. I can't remember her name offhand. Lanita Baker. That's who it is. Lanita Baker. And so when she's given a statement that that's what she did, that exact thing. She's not getting attention. Can you help us? He said, sure. So then it was, if you run for Ahmad, run for Bree. That's how it all started. And there was no protest in the city up to this point. I mean, her family was coming out. There's like maybe 10 or 15 of them. They'd make some noise or whatever and go home. And then things started picking up, and you could feel the tension in the city start to rise from the end of April through the 1st of May. And I remember reaching out to my boss going, can you please have them release the search warrant? Because at this time, here was the narrative. We were at the wrong place. She was asleep in her bed when we killed her. Jamarcus Glover was already in custody. What were some of the other things? It was like 5 or 6 different things that were so outlandish and false that were easily proven wrong. Oh, that we didn't knock and announce. And all these things were easily proven different. And my department would not show anything. They wouldn't even show the warrant to go, no, here's her name and address. It's right here on the warrant. They refused to do it. And I said, why are we not doing this? They said, well, it goes against, we don't want to set protocol for future investigations. And I said, wait a minute. If I'd had a body cam on, that would have been released in 24 hours. What's the difference in showing my body cam footage or saying, nope, that's not true what this attorney's saying. He's making all this smoke. Let's tell the truth here. They wouldn't do it. They refused. I reached out to our city councilman, the president of our city council, who used to be a cop. He trained me in the academy. And I said, David, here's what they're saying. And I made a whole list. And I said, here's the truth. And I told the list, I said, what can you do about it? He said, yeah, our mayor's a coward. I'll do a press conference Monday and tell the truth. Thank you. I thought I had help. Monday came and went. The next Monday came and went. Next thing I know, he's on live TV talking about, oh, they should have never done a no-knock warrant. They shouldn't have done this and that. I'm like, it wasn't a no-knock warrant. And so I'm texting him while he's on TV, calling him a coward, saying, this is ridiculous, man. You know, you used to be a cop. What happened to you? And but now he's politics, so that trumps everything. So all this stuff was going down. We had the proof in our hands. They let the narrative get so spun up and let people's emotions get so riled up that things started building and building and building. And then George Floyd happened, and just all hell broke loose. That's when things really blew up in the city.
And for I'm not sure that we mentioned this. Sam is Aguiar. Is that how you say his
Aguiar,
name?
yeah,
He's a local attorney there that I guess took up the family's case.
correct.
And and I remember reading there one point where he accused you guys of going drinking before you went on the raid.
Oh man, he said we went drinking. He said we went there to rob her and steal the money. All these crazy claims, and people believe it. People believe it because no one on our behalf would stand up. We had gag orders on us. We couldn't say anything. Nobody would stand up on our behalf and go, that's crazy." I
Why
tell
is it
people,
you think why is it you think the leadership, and I hate to use the word leadership. Why do you hate to why is it that you think that the people in management positions did not address this? Because to the point is, you're right. You think about all the rules that are out there now for body cam. You see, if there's a shooting in LA, they've got a video about it where they're releasing the body cam with the context around it. Here's what really happened.
Mhm.
Is not part of the remit, is not part of the duty of law enforcement, is to keep the peace. What other better way to keep the peace? You can't stop everything, but at least you can stop the rumors from flying by giving the truth out there to say, look, we don't have all the facts, but here's the facts we have, and here's the facts from the search warrant. Why do you think these swivel chair commandos just let you guys hang out there to dry? Were they already looking at as how to spin this and deflect blame? I mean, what's your theory?
I think a couple things came into play here. I think the first one was, number one, they knew they were kind of the reason we were there because of the gentrification. Our mayor's office runs our department, not our chief. Okay. There's a lady named Amy Hessen, who's our number 2 in charge. She's at all the big meetings. She controls things. When she tells the chief to jump, he jumps. I mean, that's just a face. Okay. The mayor's office runs the department in Louisville, period. And I think they had egg on their face from this gentrification stuff that they didn't want. They had already, number two, I think they thought the same thing I thought. With COVID, this isn't going to be a big deal. We'll just let a dog lie and hope it goes away. And unfortunately, it didn't. And once it didn't, our mayor had already gotten on stage and said, we need justice for Breonna Taylor. We're going to get to the bottom of this. If I could fire these guys right now, I would. All this stuff, the mayor had already come out. The governor had already given her his his podium during his COVID speeches on 2 different occasions with her attorneys calling for our arrest, calling for our indictment, calling for us to lose our job and our pensions. This is all in leadership position authorities podiums that they're talking at on TV. And so now when it explodes, they're going to have egg on their face if they come back and go, well, we knew all along the warrant was at the right place and she wasn't in bed. She was actually in the hall. And, Jamarcus Glover wasn't in custody, and all these things that they easily could have shown the public that they withheld. They didn't want to look like fools.
And this Amy Hess, who was the number 2, what was her background before Louisville PD?
Well, that's Amy Hess. The other one is Hessen. And
Oh,
Amy
sorry.
Hess, it was our coordinator over EMS, fire, and police. She was our public safety director. She had come to Louisville in December of 19. She just retired from the FBI. She was the highest ranking female official ever in the FBI. She was appointed to DC by James Comey, if that tells you anything. And she came to work after she retired for Greg Fisher. And that'll come into play in here in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one other observation I want to make too is this is the thing that's always been my complaint, and this is one thing I kind of took on as my personal mission when I was doing some training of new officers. I spent a lot of time covering policy procedure, what their rights were during an internal investigation, because the thing, and it brought it home one time when one of the guys I worked with, the sergeant, was the victim of an aggravated assault. A guy pointed a weapon at him, and by all rights, he probably could have dropped him, but they were able to resolve the situation. He's the victim of the aggravated assault, an attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. We go into court, and of course, they always do they make a motion to exclude all the witnesses. They've got to go out, into the hallway or whatever. And so he stayed there. And they said, "No, look, you've got to get out. All the witnesses have been sequestered. You've got to go out into the hallway." And he looks at him. He goes, and this is what he says to the judge. He goes, "I'm the fucking victim. Are you telling me I have to leave?" And the judge looks at him and goes, "Fair point, because you know what? The fact that he had a uniform on gave him second class status. He wasn't entitled to the same rights and the same due process as everybody else was." And look, Murph and I both say nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
Right.
I unfortunately had to be involved in some investigations to take action against bad cops. Nobody wants that. But that does not mean that whether you're a good guy or a bad guy in society, that you're not entitled to the same due process. Breonna Taylor, Jamarcus Glover, Walker, they're all entitled to due process, but so are you.
Correct. Correct. And so here's what happened this is the part that hurt worse than being shot. I'd take being shot 10 times over from the betrayal of the department, the city that you poured your blood, sweat, and tears into. And so at the end of May, it was Sunday night. This was when the riots first broke out. We'd already gotten word that there were some threats against us. Now we'd received a ton of overt threats through social media. I already had to change my phone number because it had gotten doxxed, and all these people calling, threatening, "We're going to kill your wife and kids, and we're going to do a no knock on your kids," and all this stuff. They attacked my kids on social media. They did all this stuff. And
How long after the shooting does this start?
that started after the Ahmaud Arbery stuff. So end of April, 1st of May,
Okay.
about when that started picking up. But then the end of May, I get a call from TFO for the Joint Terrorism Task Force, who works up at the FBI, saying, "Man, you need to get you and your family, and y'all need to get out of town." I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "It's been corroborated from 2 different informants that Breonna Taylor's family has taken a hit out on you guys." Now, her mom was high up in a black motorcycle club in town that's known for violence, drug dealing, gun sales, all that. So she's part of that club. Her boyfriend's the vice president. Apparently, they had gotten together with the sister club in town and brought in Sin City from Chicago and had a meeting, and these informants were there. And they gave into detail different ways they could take us out. And her birthday was coming up in June, first part of June, I think June 5th. And what I was told was that they wanted something to celebrate on her balloon release. And if it wasn't one of you cops, it's going to be one of your family members. So we had to scramble, find a place out of town, get my entire family, parents, kids, grandkids, everybody, and get out of town at 2 in the morning. Here we are in this caravan. It's like a scene out of a movie.
Well, let's stop there for a second and underscore something for a minute because you're not just talking about it wasn't just like a couple rumors. You've got a task force officer, a TFO assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Anytime, like especially with a warrant, if a one informant says it, that's one thing. If two independent sources tell you the same information, you can start using that to get things like a search warrant. It starts becoming probable cause. When you talk to this guy, obviously the hairs on the back of your neck are going up. But when he talked to you, you know how it is. Sometimes cops talk to you, say, "Hey, look, just watch your back." Versus, "Dude, this is serious shit." What kind of a conversation was it with that guy? What triggered in your mind to say this ain't the usual stuff?
Oh, it was very straightforward. He was very straightforward. He didn't beat around the bush. He's like, this is what's taken place. Two informants have come in. They've corroborated their stories. The informants don't know each other. They don't know their informants. One of the informants actually works for the ATF. They're on an OSADEF case as we speak. They've already bought guns from this club. This informant's tied in. The other one's a peripheral guy, but he's tied into the club as well. And they both came to us. They came to separate handlers with the same story, which
So
was
both
taken to the
informants
FBI.
were connected to the motorcycle club that her mother was involved in.
Correct. And so when that took place and he's like, dude, you got to go. I mean, there was no wiggle room. There was no questioning. Are you sure we got to go? Because the way he presented it was like, oh crap, man, this sucks. Because again, we had already been kind of briefed on some threats that had been rumored through other people, but not through informants. Now we had inside people coming to us. And so once we got out of town, I was expecting the FBI as a victim, because now at this point, I am a true victim, not just involved in a shooting victim, but now I'm a true victim here with my family having a hit taken out on them. And the FBI won't talk to us. I reached out through my attorney, I reached out to our department, and they were keeping us at arm's distance for whatever reason. Don't know the entire reason, have no idea. Um, and when this is taking place, I'm thinking, man, what is going on? And so I told the TFO, because he used to work for me in another unit, and I said, when we talk, we won't talk about the case. All I need you to do is let me know if there's anything serious I need to watch about. I said, I want the integrity of the case to go good. So if it comes to court, you can testify and say I did not give any information. Plus, I didn't want him to lose his job at the FBI. And so all this is taking place. And he calls me like a day later. Okay, they're going to do warrants on all these phones. It's moving forward. We're going with it. The next day calls. Man, I don't know what's going on, but something's funny here. The next day. And I just got into a big argument with the bosses here. They came down and were saying that uh, they don't think the informants are reputable. And I said, how the hell are they not reputable when one's on an OSADEF case working for the feds right now? If they're not reputable, they've got to pull this person off the case and they can never be used again. That's their protocol. And I said, how come nobody's ever reached out to me? Can you have one of them reach out to me? They wouldn't do it. So about the fifth day in, they take this guy who's telling me this stuff, and they kick him off the floor. They cut his key badge off, won't allow him access to the guys
The
working the case.
TFO.
Yes, the TFO. And they said it's because of the integrity of the investigation because he's an LMPD guy. And so when they do that, my wheels are turning. I'm going, wait a minute, this ain't making sense. What's going on here? So this is just the detective and me coming out, or maybe the paranoid. I don't know, but it all makes sense. So I'm thinking, how could this be? I talked to a retired FBI agent who was a undercover guy, very well respected, did it for 32 years, I think. He used to work for Amy Hess, who is now our public safety director. He also worked for the SAC in Louisville, a guy named Brown, who was the SAC at the time. He calls me and goes, man, I hate to tell you this. He said, but Amy Hess and Brown are like really tight. They're good friends. They talk on the phone every day. They go to lunch. I would just keep an eye out. That's all he would tell me. And I'm like, huh, okay. Why are you telling me this? Well, who does Amy Hess work for? Greg Fisher. What does Greg Fisher want? Our jobs. He's already condemned us from a public venue. So Amy Hess works for Greg Fisher. She's a very liberal person, number one. She's not pro police. She's on that side. And we think that she reached out to Brown over at the FBI, her buddy, and said, hey, do me a favor, just make this murder for hire go away. Do something with it. So they by day 10, they closed the investigation completely. And you and I know how hard it is to get an investigation open through the FBI. And they don't close cases just in case, because once they close them, it's hard to get them reopened through DC. So they closed the case.
In 10 days?
10 days. 10 days
10 days,
closed
you can't even
the
get up to speed on a
case.
case.
Exactly. And then they lied about it. The AUSA lied about it because I reached out to them. Oh no, case is still going. Blah blah blah. Well, the guys on the inside were already telling me case is done, dude. There's no case. We have zero access to it. And um, so I'm thinking that Amy has told Brown. Well, then like 2 months later, Brown gets appointed to her old position in D.C. So it's looking at the puzzle. You're going, well, this kind of makes sense. I can see how everybody calls you conspiracy theorists and stuff, but man, a lot of those have come true lately. So I can see how this could play out. Where, hey, Brown, take care of me here, and I'll take care of you. Okay, because once they're at that sack position, it's all political. They're trying to go up, and that's exactly what happened here. And so the case was dropped. My attorney's done Freedom of Information Act request, keeps getting denied on them. They said they will not. Release a case file because we were like, well, just release the case file to KSP or to somebody else who can work the case. Give it to ATF. They got the informant. Let them run with it. Wouldn't do it. They said, no, we're not releasing anything because no one was charged in this case. And so therefore we're not required to release any information. So that's where we stand with the FBI. They've still never once reached out to me about it. Not a victim's advocate, nobody. They wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't talk to my attorney. It's just been a very odd and peculiar thing because I had FBI clearance at this time. And so I'm like, wait a minute. I know some of your all's protocols. I know some of the rules, and you aren't. They're not playing by them. They're making them up as they go.
If it hadn't been for
Mm.
your friend, the TFO, would you have gotten any word from the Bureau at all that you were a
No,
target?
none, zero. I don't know about the target. Wait a minute. Let me go back. I don't know if I wouldn't have gotten any word about the target, but I 100% know once the case was open, I would have been given zero information from there on out. I would have never known the case was closed because they lied to my attorney for 6 weeks before they finally told the truth. And finally, we got a response in an email that said, case is closed, no anticipated charges. That's it. That was our answer.
I mean, I'm stunned. I mean, I'm trying to figure out just stunning. I mean, it's like, here's the thing. Again, it's like were mistakes made? Mistakes were made all over the place, right? But we are humans. We're imperfect. That's the nature of police work. Is you do the best you can. You do all the work you can. You put everything you can. You dot the i's, cross the t's, belt suspenders. Use your favorite analogy. But at some point, it's like I think you're right. The most disheartening thing is to be left to hang out to dry the way that you were. Let's go back to that a little bit too, because I want to talk about the state investigations, the city investigations, the federal investigations. I mean, how many different ways has your role in this been investigated?
The three that I know of, the city did theirs, the Attorney General of the state of Kentucky did theirs, and then the DOJ did theirs.
As far, and I'm just this question is only as it relates to you. As it relates to you, have you been charged with any crime?
No, not at all.
Ever.
You've been
Not
looked
at
at
all.
by the Department of Justice.
Correct.
No charges.
No charges.
That you've been looked at by the state. No charges.
No charges.
You've been looked at by the city. No charges.
No charges.
What does that tell you?
That we didn't do anything wrong that night.
This was presented to a grand jury after the shooting, right?
Yes.
And what was the grand jury? There was a true bill passed down?
No, what they did is so Cameron, uh, Daniel Cameron, who's our attorney general in his office, they did not present murder charges against me or Miles because they looked at the state statutes, they looked at all the evidence, and they said it didn't meet any of it. None of it. It was all self-defense at the door after we got shot and he got shot at. So he didn't even present that to a grand jury because he said it didn't meet any of the elements. So why would he present it? So he did the right thing. He's our first black attorney general. Man, he took some heat. I mean, he got letters from
Dude, I
Beyonce.
remember I watched some of those conferences on TV, some of those press conferences, and I watched him doing that. And it's like, but at some point, you hope people do their job. Like, if the evidence is there, then present it. And if it's not there, then don't force. This is not putting a square peg in a round hole. Just because you are wedded to an outcome that you publicly, like the mayor and everybody else, stated, "Hey, here's what we're going to do." What happened to due process? What happened to my rights? When did they become second class compared to everybody else's rights?
Yeah, because the entire cry from even local attorneys was, "We'll take him to trial and let a jury decide." Well, if you didn't meet the elements of the crime and you didn't commit a crime, are we taking everything that we don't like to a jury
Right.
and letting emotions play here? No, we're going by facts. And I'm glad he had the courage to do it because a lot of people didn't.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
just
and this
because you want something to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
well, but
But
that's where you gotta it's like an investigator. You guys probably been given the same kind of crap from people. It's like you don't let emotions get in the way. It's you follow the facts. It's not how I feel about somebody. I might despise you, but if the facts don't lead me to a conclusion, probable cause that says you're the one who committed this crime, there's not going to be an arrest. You just don't arrest based upon the fact I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
right.
If that was the case, there'd be an awful lot of people in jail. Hell, I might be in jail. There might be a few people out there that hook my ass up because they didn't like me. But that's not the way it works. But let's continue to talking about the aftermath because, like you say, it was the beginning of COVID. You're right. You put that in perspective. I had just gotten back from Israel, and about 2 weeks later, I almost didn't make it out of Israel. Then 2 weeks later, everything starts shutting down, which kind of tamped down things for a while. But then things pick back up. What about your career though on Louisville? I mean, how long does it take for the city case to play out and the state case to play out before that comes to an end?
Well, the city case never totally ended. They were forced to give their stuff over to both the FBI and the attorney generals and were asked to step out of it. So when they did that, the attorney general came back in September, I think it was, and then finally in April, April the following year in 21, they finally said I could come back to work because I've been asking, when can I come back to work? I mean, I rehabbed hard. I didn't want to sit at home. I wanted to go to work. I want to just get back doing what I was doing. And even though I was jaded, even though I was, disheartened by them, I thought I'm going to keep working. What else can I do?
Well, if none of this had been going on, how long would you have been back to work? How long did it take you to rehab before you said, "Look, I'm ready to go to work"? Would it have been 3 months, 4 months, 6 months?
Yeah, it was maybe 3 months when I got the release, 3 or 4 when I got the
And
release to go
so
back.
the rest of the time, what are you on?
Paid
Administrative
leave.
leave?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the day I go back in the office, I walk in the office, my major calls me in and he goes, "Man, I hate to do this, but here," and handed me a piece of paper. I said, "What's this?" I read it. It's an involuntary transfer to the property room. Now that goes our FOP, we have guidelines and there has to be protocols met unless they use the "for the good of the department." That's kind of their coverall.
Catchphrase, yeah.
Yes. And that's what the chief put on there. It was for the good of the department that I be moved to the property room, basically out of sight, out of mind. And man, I was furious. I
That's
said,
like going to the rubber gun squad.
yeah. I said, "Boss," I said, "I didn't commit a crime. I didn't violate policy. I got shot. Why am I getting punished? This makes no sense to me." He said, "Man, it's out of my control. Nothing I can do." So I said, "Fine." I said, "Give me a couple of weeks vacation. I got to think about this." And I put my papers in and went ahead and checked out because I could see the writing on the wall. Because at this point, we had Chief Erica Shields. She had just come from Atlanta and all that debacle down there with Brooks, where she fired people. They got their jobs back because she acted on total emotion and cowered to the public. Her very first press conference here on TV said Breonna Taylor shouldn't have happened. She was just asleep in her bed, and this is just another case of white. What was the word she used? It wasn't white supremacy. White. Uh,
Whiteness.
something like that. Basic. And then she went on to say, "You can't hand me that crap that this happened in a black community because they commit the most crimes." She said they would never do this to a white person at this time of night. And I'm sitting back going, "You just called me a racist, and you lied and said she was in her bed, and you're my chief." And so I started
Wait a minute.
requesting.
So they called you a racist at this point, and tell me again about your son-in-law and kid.
Yeah, he's black, and they're biracial.
And
It's
how long has he been a part of your family at this point?
well, he's been dating my daughter since she was 13, and she's 26 now. So 13, half of her life.
Yeah, so but 13 years, right?
Yeah,
So while
correct,
before Breonna Taylor, after Breonna Taylor was gone, you've got a black son-in-law
correct,
and 2 grandbabies
correct.
that are biracial,
Yep,
and you're a racist.
100%. Yeah,
See, this is the thing that pisses me off. People don't think through it. They get the narrative in there, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this podcast episode. Maybe there'll be some people who don't like it and quit listening in. If you're uncomfortable having an uncomfortable conversation, this isn't the podcast for you.
Right.
This is one of the reasons we wanted to really take on some issues. And are we, in a sense, defending what you did? Absolutely, because the more you learn the facts, it's like Here's the thing. Here's the thing I'm defending. You went through 3 levels of review. The city could have done something, but they punted. They gave it to the state. The state could have done something. They didn't. The feds could have done something that they didn't. As far as it concerns you, how many times do you have to be vindicated that what you did was legitimate and just? Was it the outcome you wanted? No. But that's the way society goes. You take the world as you find it, not as you wish it was. Now, there are other officers involved who face their own forms of justice and face their own punishment. But as it relates to you, I think the worst thing somebody said you had on your record, because I want to talk about Michael Strahan's interview too, but
Okay.
I think the worst thing you had on your record was you got a reprimand for sending an email out because you were pissed about the way you were being treated. I mean,
Well, up to this point, that was after the fact. Up to this point, the only reprimand I had on my record was I got written up for turning in a use of force late. It wasn't my use of force. I was
I
a
would have written
sergeant.
your ass up for falling over the damn fence and making LAPD look like fools. That would have been in your permanent record there, pal.
Yeah,
No,
Well,
it kind of
and
is.
one other thing we need to touch on here is, so what was the outcome of the charges against Kenneth Taylor, the guy
Kenneth
that shot
Walker.
you?
So Kenneth Walker,
Walker, I'm sorry.
our the council member that was in charge of our public safety got on a Zoom meeting because they were doing all their meetings by Zoom at this point. They allowed Ben Crump into this meeting. On this Zoom meeting, she gets up there and says, Kenneth Walker's a hero. And I demand that Tom Wine, who's our Commonwealth attorney, drop all charges on him. Well, like 3 days later, they dropped the charges on him. And they said, I had one of them call me and go, "Hey man, I'm sorry about this. We're the charges are coming. We need to, tighten everything up to make sure it holds up in court." And I was like, okay, we'll see. I kind of believed him at this point because it was early on. I thought, well, maybe they'll do the right thing. And then, um, 6 months later, and this is on a podcast recording. Steve Romines is the attorney for Kenneth Walker. This is on a recording of him saying this. He said, "We included Tom Wine in on our lawsuit against the city. Tom Wine's part of it. I told Tom Wine if he would dismiss Kenneth Walker's case with prejudice, meaning we can't go back and charge him anymore, that we'll take his name out of the lawsuit." And the day before that deadline, they did that. All charges dropped, can't come back on him. So they took him out of the lawsuit. Um,
Wow.
if that's not
Boy,
quid pro quo, if that's not a
this is on him, the attorney saying this on recording. I mean,
unbelievable.
that qualifies as extortion. Either you do this or I'm gonna, we're
Exactly.
gonna sue you, and it's an official act.
yeah.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
his charges are dropped. This past week, the city settled with him for $2 million, and told us to go pound sand. Just kind of the way this whole thing's gone.
And I mean, so Kenneth Walker was in love with Breonna because he held her as she passed away. But while he was in jail, weren't there some recorded phone
Yeah,
calls
like the
made?
second day he was in jail, he's calling a girl trying to have phone sex with her. Like a week later, he talks to another girl telling her how much he loves her and he's going to marry her when he gets out. And this is the same guy. When they downloaded his phone, they found he's selling weed and pills, which are probably fentanyl pills. Don't know for sure, but they look like it because he had pictures of them on his phone, selling them to all the Hooters girls. He's talking about home invasions on there. Um, and so, he's not a good guy, not
Un-
salt of the earth.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And
And
yet the
now he's been
city gives him
portrayed to be
two
some
million
kind of
bucks.
freaking hero.
Yeah,
He's just
Why does he
another
get $2
criminal.
million?
because they said we shouldn't have been there because of the warrant, and that's what they told us. I don't know. I said, if that's the case, I shouldn't have been there either. I was lied to just like everybody else. If the warrant was no good and we shouldn't have been there, I shouldn't have been there.
And so his attorney is going to get a third of that $2 million. So over $600,000 he just put in his pocket for
Right.
getting up and telling a bunch of freaking lies.
Yep.
Well, so let's continue on. Let's talk a little bit too about the aftermath of the other people involved because they really spent a lot of time going after people on this.
Right.
What happened to some of your other partners on this case?
So Brett Hankerson, who's the guy that moved around the front and shot through the windows, he was charged on a state level for wanton endangerment. He went through trial, and we're a super liberal city. Louisville is. I mean, super liberal. We're like little San Francisco. And I thought for sure, man, they wouldn't give him a change of venue. I thought, man, he's going to get hammered. He's going to get found guilty, even though he's not. of anything, but I know the way the city runs. And they deliberated for less than 2 hours, came out acquitted because they finally heard some of the facts that nobody
Mhm.
had heard.
And you know, and I know too, when you're in a jury trial and they come out that fast, it's usually not good news for the
Exactly.
defendant.
Oh, I was
It takes
sick,
them
man.
longer than that to make freaking coffee and decide who's gonna be in charge of the jury foreman.
So the DOJ, one of them was in the room, or one of the FBI agents was in the courtroom and was heard saying as they walked out, "Don't worry, this ain't over," because they were still going after him. They've since indicted him for uh, the federal charge of wanton endangerment. Same thing. I can't remember what they call it. Some
Civil
small.
rights violations and some
Well,
other stuff too.
then
Yeah.
they hit him with the civil rights violation.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who the only reason he shot through those windows is because his last sighting of us was at the door, hearing me say I got shot as he's going around to the side. All he hears is rapid gunfire. He thought we were getting assassinated at that doorway, and he was doing whatever he could to try to get us out of there, save our life. That was his mindset at the time. Because I asked him, "Tell me why you did what you did, because if I got to talk about it, I need to know." And that was it. That's what he said. Man, I was trying to get you out of the doorway. I thought you were dead. And so the state acquitted him. The feds have since indicted him, and if he gets found guilty with that tag on of the civil rights violation, that's life in prison for not hitting anything but a wall. I mean, it's a witch hunt, is what it is.
It gets more and more ridiculous as this continues to go.
Yeah, and so on the other two that wrote the warrant, Kelly and Josh, Kelly got caught up in they called it slushy gate. Her and three other guys before they came to narcotics. This was back in 2018 or 19. They were caught on one of the person's videos on their cell phone. Uh, They were going getting full slushies and riding around throwing them on people, helpless people on the side of the road, homeless people, whatever. And so she's part of that. When they brought her in for this, they revealed that they had the slushy thing on her too. So now this is a civil rights violation or whatever it is, which I didn't know the feds investigated people throwing slushies on people. It's kind of extreme seeing some of the cases we've taken to them that they've declined. But they took that along with this and let her proffer. And when she did, she told the truth, saying, "We knew it wasn't true. I put it in there anyway." Then after it came out, when we were exposed by the postal inspector, Josh called me. We met in his garage, and we said we were going to put it on Mattingly, and that's what they did. That's what they put in the investigative letter, that I told them that. And so they've got to face the music for that. You dug that grave. It's not my
Well,
problem.
they were going to how so what was their plan to put it on you? What was their statements that they made that was designed to put you in the crosshairs?
Well, in the investigative letter, it says, "I specifically told them that the postal inspector did say the packages were going there in Jamarcus Glover's name," which is so easily refuted. I don't know why they would do it, other than ignorance or naivety. I have no idea.
See, well, so again, I hate to knock a couple of your colleagues, but I'm going to do it anyway. First of all, what the fuck are you doing driving around throwing slushies on people? I mean,
Just
Right.
idiots. That's
what?
idiotic.
I mean, in what universe can you look at that? It's different than pulling a prank on somebody, right? It's different
Oh,
than
100%.
putting their car in drive and letting them go over. We call those drive-in theaters.
Yeah,
You said it's a drive-in theater.
that's what it was. I was having a brain fart.
Yeah, that's okay. Because you're not old like me and Murph. We have
Yeah.
a rock solid steel trap mind. What was I saying? Oh yeah, no, just kidding. Uh, yeah, so I mean, that's the thing you look at. In what universe would that have been acceptable in any event? Where did they think that this was okay? You know why they did it? I
Because
mean,
they,
this is
cause
what
they
this is
got
my
away
theory.
with it.
Because they did it because they could, and they could
Yeah.
get away with it. Because what homeless person is going to be considered legitimate or credible, and it's just a slushy, right? It's not like you're throwing acid on them or bleach or anything else. Juicy Smolier, as Dave Chappelle says. It's-
Yeah, it's all disheartening, because you know just when you think, okay, I've gotten past some betrayals, then you hear somebody that you were just helping out, that you took a bullet for because of their bad information, that now you're going to try to blame it on me, and I'm not taking another bullet for this guy. I'm just not doing it.
in Washington D.C., been around this place for too long, and Murph, you know it too. It's not the lie; it's the cover up.
Right.
That's what gets so many people in trouble. It's the cover up of the lie. If you just come out and say I screwed up and I did it, you're going to get a lot of flexibility. They're going to cut you a break. But it's the cover up. And that's what got these guys in trouble, right? It really wasn't
Oh
so
yeah,
much the actions of that night. It was the cover up from the actions of that night.
exactly. Yeah, that was it. Because all they had to come out, like you said, and say, "Man, I was framing this out, I forgot to take it out," or "I thought that's what he said, I misheard him," or anything other than let's lock our heels in and come up with something together. That's just stupid.
Just be honest and tell the truth, which is
That's
part of
it.
the freaking oath we took, when we started carrying a badge.
Yeah, and their sergeant got charged with I don't know what he got charged with. Something I think some kind of catch-all, and I really don't. I think he's getting hung out to dry too. He's a good guy. I don't think he did anything wrong. I think the biggest mistake he made was on all the ones they had the risk assessment matrix done ahead of time. On this one, they didn't, and I think he did it the next day. And that's all I can think of. I have no idea what he would have done because, like I said, he's a good guy and doesn't portray himself that way.
I got to ask you about two other people here before we talk about your media interviews. Sergeant Andrew Meyer filed a report saying no shot should have been fired by police even after Mattingly was shot.
Yeah, he's
What is that all about?
he
Didn't he
suggest
have problems?
he said I should be fired for what I did. But this is the same coward, man. I've got stories on him. Uh, Several years back, he made a run on when he was on the beat. He made a run on a pit bull. The owner called saying my dog's trying to kill me. He gets there. This dude's screaming inside. He won't go inside. My other buddy's on an additional beat, rides over, nosy. Heck, dog's chewing a dude's face off. I want to see it. You know how we are. We're demented like that. He goes over there. He gets out. Myers standing at the door. He can hear the guy screaming inside. He goes up and goes, "What are you doing, man?" He went, "I ain't going in there." So my buddy
Oh,
kicks the door open, goes in there and shoots the dog. Dude's in critical condition. Then Meyer gets mad at him for shooting the dog and says, "You should never take any life." So it just shows you his
You
mindset.
are in the wrong job then, my friend, because
Oh yeah,
at
he should
some
be
point,
an activist somewhere, not doing what he's doing. But he's able to be an activist inside the police department is the bad thing. And
oh,
so then the first day of the riots, the very first day when all hell broke loose, he's in the middle of it. He's over a unit because he's a sergeant. He has a panic attack, freaks out, goes, takes his stuff off, sits down by cars, crying, has his hands in his head, and then he takes stress leave. Never had to do another riot again. Yet he's the guy investigating all of us for uses of force. How does that make
oh,
sense when you're the coward, when you refuse to use
right.
force, but you investigate everybody else for it?
Yeah, what qualifies him to make that decision,
there is
to
a
make that
technical
statement?
term for it, and it's called pussy.
Yes,
Um,
yes, I
yeah, I'm
agree.
sorry. At some point, like we say, the other thing though too that's worse than a bad cop or just about as bad is a fucking coward
Yeah,
who throws. And look, if you're a coward and you know you are, that's fine. Admit it. Get out of the business.
Yeah.
There was a story here a while back. I think I told you, Murph. Two officers that should have dropped a guy, a murder suspect, a guy who just shot and killed one or two people. Two officers confront him. They tried using their taser. He pointed a gun at him. They would not use lethal force, even though everything said they could.
I saw
He
that.
ends up getting smoked, yeah, by another department. This guy could have gone off and killed some people. And so both
Mhm.
of these guys resign. They say, hey, we're not cut out for this. How the fuck did you get the job in the first place? Who was on your interview board? Did you not pass the psychological? I mean,
Mhm.
nobody wants to do this. All those people that say you just wanted to become a cop because you want to shoot people. No,
I
there people go through their careers, never fire their weapon, and there's
you
some
know,
people who are involved in things.
I was a cop for 38 years. I know cops all around the world. I haven't met a single one yet that became a law enforcement professional
Yep.
because they wanted to kill somebody.
No, not at all.
Outrageous. And then there's one more guy we got to talk about, Carl Price, former prosecutor. And I take this at a quote. Do not I can't believe he said this, that you guys do not have the unfettered discretion and unlimited opportunity to shoot at someone just because they shot at you. What are you supposed to do? Apologize to them?
You know, Carl used to be a prosecutor, and he was a very good one. He was over the backfire cases, which dealt with guns. It was the national backfire thing they had, where if any gun cases that came to court went through him, and he would hammer people, and everybody enjoyed getting him as your prosecutor because he wasn't scared to go after them. But since he's gone into private practice, he did what they all do, and has to keep his clientele base happy because none of us could get attorneys in town. We reached out to the best of the best in town and got denied, 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 denied. I finally had one attorney tell me the truth, which I knew the truth going in. But one had the balls to tell me the truth and said, John, I want to take your case, but it will ruin my business. My son's getting out of law school. He's got my name. You know who we cater to. You know who our clients are. If I take you on, my business is done.
And as much as you hate that he's saying that, you kind of respect the guy
I
because he
respect
was
the hell
honest
out of
with
him
you.
for it. Yeah, I told him that. I said, thank you. You're the only one that's told me the truth. I knew the truth, but I was waiting for somebody to tell me.
Let's go back to the night though, because I want to ask a question.
Yeah,
In terms of Breonna Taylor and her death, was anybody ever criminally charged or convicted of that?
no,
What does that tell you?
that they were looking for any peripheral thing just so they could say they did something. And that's why they're going back after Brett again. They just want to say they did something to somebody unseen, regardless of what the guys did to get the warrant, regardless of all that other stuff, all
All
that
I'm saying is,
noise.
with everything stacked against you, the fact that between the city, the state, or the feds, that nobody has been charged or convicted in her death, as unfortunate as it is, because it's unfortunate, because she wasn't the problem here. It was Wallace. But again, my point is, what I'm saying, what does that tell you? It
It
means
was a
is that
tragedy. It wasn't criminal. It was a tragedy.
Right.
is a tragedy, and that's the point. It wasn't criminal. When you can factor everything in, the use of force, the use of self-defense was justified in the law. And I know, if they could have come up with a way, because of the way the politics were, if there was a way to charge somebody, they would have done it by now.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And they're still, I still think personally they're headhunting for something. Um, but, maybe it's just my paranoia kicking in.
It's a shame that the attorneys that come and really stir the pot, that make false accusations, who are members, I'm assuming, of the American Bar Association, who are supposed to be ruled by credible ethics, come out and make these false claims, knowingly making the false claims, just incite people into having violent protests and so forth. It's a shame that they can't be held accountable. And I'm specifically talking about Sam Aguiar, I
Aguiar.
think, and Ben Crump. Um, just knowingly making these false statements, and Ben Crump even coming out in the Washington Post saying that he called every black female of influence that he knew, including Tiffany Haddish, who I had to look up. I've never heard of her. I guess she's a comedian, and Senator Kamala Harris, in an effort to get the word out and sway public opinion.
Yep.
Oh my God! Isn't that a violation of your ethics?
Well, I watched a documentary before any of this happened. And it's funny how it's so true in real life. It was about court cases and lawyers, and these were these top ones around the nation. And they said, we don't win cases in court anymore. We win them in the public before the trial even starts. That's how
Absolutely
we win
right.
cases. And so that was my point in coming out, writing the book. That was my point in starting getting on these podcasts, blasting it back before any of these decisions came out. Because I thought if I can influence one person with the truth on one of these juries that one of us is going to get, then that'll help. And if that can make a difference, that's what I wanted to do. Give me the heat, give me the scrap, and other people are going to yell at me and say I'm this and I'm that, whatever. I can take it, but I don't want to see these guys get taken down unjustly.
Well, let's be clear about something too, because you did write a book, 12 Seconds in the Dark. Your book, even though it's on Amazon, people can find it. Your book got turned down by some other publishers. There were some other people that decided to censor you.
Yeah,
Censor is an official kind of government word, but they declined to publish you because a friend of mine, who's a radio personality out here, and him and I have done some stuff on the news together. He actually has a perfect saying for this. He says the media has the most insidious power there is, and it's the power to ignore.
Hmm.
People think it's the power to promote. No, it's the power to ignore. They can ignore you, and they attempted to ignore you and your story by advocating not publishing your book.
yeah, yeah. Simon and Schuster was the one. I found a publisher who was willing to do it. It was a smaller publisher out of Nashville, Post Hill Press. Anthony Zaccardi's the owner there. Super great guy, but his only resource of getting books out is through Simon and Schuster as the distributor. And once they cut him off and said, nope, not happening, not doing it, not putting it on Amazon, we're not printing it, we're not doing anything, he was stuck and he felt horrible. And I still appreciate him. I like him because he hooked me up. I had a couple other people wanting the rights to it. We went with Daily Wire because I thought if Amazon shuts us down or if anybody else, at least they have some outlets to get it out. Doesn't mean I agree with everything they do or say either, but at least they have outlets to get it out. Because since then, I've had major right wing or conservative people and stations that won't touch this, that said all the stuff before until the truth came out, and they won't touch me now. And that was with Ben Shapiro's crew asking them, do us a favor. We do, they do this back and forth all the time with each other, helping each other out. And when even through their requests several times, they were denied because they just didn't want to touch it.
But you're saying it. But Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire folks are the ones who publish this.
Yes.
You know who else he's picked up to that got canceled by Hollywood?
Was it Josh Hawley?
Gina Carano.
Oh
She
yeah.
was in. She was in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's one of those things. And people are going to say, "Well, Ben's right wing. He's this. He's that." You know what? I think we've lost the ability in this country to have a conversation, to have uncomfortable conversations, and have divergent points of view, and still, when you get done, be a friend, go out and have a cup of coffee or a beer, or a drink, or go to dinner and stuff. Steve and I have talked about this. We both have friends that are as far one side of the spectrum as we are politically. But you know what? In fact, I'll be calling one of these guys. He's actually going to, I'm having him do some legal work for things that I'm doing. Why? Because this guy, as different as we are politically, he is the city attorney for the city of New Haven. He defends cops on a regular basis. And he takes great pride in doing that because takes pride in his profession as an attorney. I have an obligation to represent my client. And I go back to what happened to the days of where the ACLU would defend the right of the KKK to march.
Right.
As abhorrent as it is, as stupid as it is, and these guys got some stupid points of view. But isn't that the whole point? The point of free speech is to have the type of speech that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's what we've lost in this country is the discourse or the back and forth, or we can't have that anymore because then you're labeled a racist, a homophobe, anything that if you've got something different than what they say.
Well, and social media has gotten it to the point where who was it? Michael Tyson said all that social media does is give people a platform to talk about when what they really need is to be punched in the mouth.
Yeah,
I mean,
very
go have a
true.
one-on-one conversation with people. And towards the end of your book, I kind of like the way you finished it up with a quote from Patrick Henry: "United we stand, divided we fall." And that's what all this rhetoric is doing, is dividing us as a country.
That's all they're doing.
Hey,
I believe.
couple things I want to close out on too, or tie off on before we talk about what's happening with you right now. Which officer was it determined to have fired the shot that killed Breonna?
To the best of their ability, they said it was Miles Cosgrove.
All right, and Miles was the one that gave you covering fire, right?
Correct. They think according to what I could get from the report, what my attorney thinks is I only struck her one time.
Okay. But my point is, even though she was struck by two different officers, neither one of you have been charged in the death of Breonna Taylor, correct?
Correct. Correct.
I mean, you can have all the narratives you want, but at the end of the day, this speaks volumes. In other words, if there was a there, is there any doubt in your mind you guys would have been indicted by now and prosecuted?
Oh, we would have been paraded across the national stage, and they would have been applauding themselves and breaking their arm, patting themselves on the back. So, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind.
Again, I go back to you talk about some of the things that were going on, like Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, Officer Wilson, the fiction of hands up, don't shoot. It was Eric Holder, Obama's DOJ, AG. They came out and they vindicated the officer. Why? Because everybody's popular narrative was he was the gentle giant, hands up, don't shoot. Even Eric Holder and Obama's own DOJ said that's not what happened. The point is, once you get the facts and the facts don't fit the narrative, people want to change the facts. Well, that's not the way it works in an investigation. If the facts don't fit the theory, you change the theory. You don't change the facts.
Right. And I told the DOJ when I had to meet with them, I said, I think what you're doing is very unethical because your boss, which is Kristen Clark, who's over the Civil Rights Division, she got on Twitter saying we were guilty and we need to go to prison and all this stuff. I said, how is that not a conflict of interest? I said, any other case in court, if the person prosecuting you or going after you had that predetermined before they knew any of the facts and still were going after you, there would be an issue. But here it just gets whitewashed and no big deal. Just let it go.
Right. Right. You know what? And another thing that we talk about on here, Morgan, I, I've got a long list here of names that were celebrities that jumped on board to go against you guys. We promote the common sense theory here. Just look at the situation. Does it make sense that a group of police officers in Louisville would knowingly and intentionally go to an apartment to kill this lady without looking at the facts behind it? And all these people are willing to believe the most outrageous stories because it's so much easier to believe what somebody else is saying versus maybe do a little research
Do
on
your
your own and
research.
find out what the true story is here. And that's the whole point of bringing John on our show today is, we promote law enforcement in the most positive light. We've never had, as terrible as this is for you and your family, we've never had an opportunity to bring an officer on that had to go through this type of misery simply because he did his
Did the
job
job.
and damn near died doing your job. The position of the politicians that they've taken on this, man, if you can't see that all they're doing is trying to get the popular vote because this is what the popular opinion is, facts be damned. It's like making when we made Narcos in Hollywood. They certainly didn't let the truth get in the way of telling a good story, did they? And that's exactly what's going on here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, Murph,
outrageous.
I'm still waiting for the DOJ investigation of you and Javier throwing that guy out of the helicopter.
Well, you're saying that like it's a bad thing, Morgan. I mean, come on now. It's a joke, everybody. So
It's a joke. It's a joke. It never
it did
happened.
not
It only
happen.
happened on the screen.
Absolutely.
But let's go back and talk a little bit about you here for a second, Sargento. Um, it has not been the easiest time. And I want to talk a little bit though too. You had a set of balls, and I'm going to give you credit for something because not a lot of people would go on a major network to be interviewed about this, knowing that these guys are going to have all these people doing research and they're going to try and sandbag you and they're going to try and surprise you and do one of these aha things. So let's talk about why did you consent to being interviewed by Michael Strahan on ABC?
Well, I wanted the truth out. Period. That was it. Um, and if I had it to do over again, I would have done the main thing I would have done different if I didn't choose a different outlet is I would have made them do it live, do a live interview so they couldn't cut it up. We talked for 3.5 hours straight and zero break. It was just like here. You and I, as long as we've talked, this is how it went. No stopping, no anything.
And they
We
cut
said,
out the parts they wanted to frame a
oh,
narrative.
they played like 5 minutes of 3.5 hours. And I remember on some of the thing, Michael using terms like, "Yeah, but we just think y'all profile. That's just how I feel." And I said, "Well, it doesn't matter how you feel, Michael. But it's my truth." I went, "Great, but it's not the truth." I said, "The truth is the only thing that matters here, not what you feel, not what you think is your truth." I said, "My kids think their truth is they need that candy before dinner, but it's not happening. So what's the difference? Just because you've got this emotional attachment to something you believe really happened doesn't make it true." And they couldn't come back with a lot of answers. There was a lot of back and forth that I wish were out there that they could have heard, because it would have given, number one, it would have painted me in a different picture, because there was a lot when it was over. And I'm gonna bust Michael out here. When it was over, he came to me and he said, "Man, I like you, even if you are a Cowboys fan. I like you." And then the very next day, I see him, 10 hours later, just destroying me and bashing me. And I'm like, "Yeah, man, you're, you're a coward." That's what he is. He's a coward.
Yeah. Which is, and I'll tell you, I was a Michael Strahan fan before I read your book. It was very disappointing to hear that.
He was a nice guy, and I get why he did what he did. You're right in the middle of this 2020 where everything blew up. If he had said, "I talked to him for 3.5 hours, and he's actually a decent guy," he'd have lost his job. He would have got canceled, and that doesn't make it right. That doesn't give an excuse to him. But I'm saying logically, I can look back and go, "This is
Why
why he
doesn't
did what he did."
somebody have the balls to just say it like it is? I mean, he's got enough money. He doesn't need any more money.
They
Why
never
can't you?
have enough money.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll take half of
Or
what he has and
greedy.
I'll be happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've kind of gone on with this because we told you we were going to start off the new year with the bang, and this is the one we're starting off with because I think we wanted to talk about cases that had a impact on the nation, cases that had an impact, and what I have found out from listening to you, and obviously Murph's done some research too. When we look at this, what is portrayed out there versus what the facts say, a lot of people could come to the same logical conclusion. That's why I keep asking, what does that tell you? You weren't indicted. You weren't charged. Nobody was charged in their death. What does that mean? The death, while it was a tragedy, was not criminal. You cannot charge somebody for a tragedy. You can only charge them for a crime.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's the way it is. And then, they're going to twist it any way they can to make these other issues, the gotcha moment. And unfortunately, it's going to stick with people because they're so used to, nowadays with all the reality TV and how everything's got to be juiced up and exciting and spicy, then, that's the way they're going to play it out and still make us look out to be villains, but we know the truth.
Well, our listeners, our regular listeners have heard us say this before. If you're a new listener, thanks for joining us here. And Javier and I, my old DEA partner, we preach this at all the shows we do. Don't let anybody else tell you what to think. When there's an issue on the table, do your research. Don't accept because somebody's famous. That doesn't mean that they have all the inside information. One of the biggest people that came out against you that I want to say I was shocked, but I really wasn't, was Oprah.
Yeah.
Came out promoting and putting up, paying her magazine is promoting it and putting up billboards, and they put Breonna Taylor on the front of her magazine and all those things. When none of that was true, most of that was not. Hell, none of it was true. They just don't know the facts. So don't let other people lead you around by the nose. We're all intelligent enough to make our own decisions and decide what we think. Just because a famous person, whether it's a movie star, a musician, a sports figure, I saw where the University of Louisville basketball team out, a team that you supported all these years growing up, came out and marched against you guys.
Right.
Go do your freaking research. Use the brain that God gave you and come up with a reasonable decision. Employ the common sense factor, and then you decide what's right and what's wrong.
Well, people
Don't
don't
let
want to do
somebody
this
lead you
because they've
around.
gotten lazy. They want somebody to give them their opinion. That's why I never subscribe to any of these newsletters. Say, we'll tell you what the news is every morning. Just
Yeah.
sign up for this here. Up yours. I don't need that. Let's talk about you, though, for a second, John. Let's finish this out by talking about what you've gone through now since this has gone on. I mean, ever since you had to take your family into hiding, what's that been like since then?
Um, it's been totally life changing. So we had just bought this house that we had looked for because it was right in the crazy market. Um, we just bought it and we lived in it for 5 weeks and we got moved out of it. We never moved back into it. We ended up having to sell it, lost a little money on it. Um, Bounced around for, I think we lived in 5 different places over a year and a half before we got our own place. So it's been challenging. You know, what I tell when I travel around and speak to these other officers is that as police, we become kind of calloused to threats and calloused to violence and all this, but our families aren't. This is all new to them. And you go from living your normal life to being uprooted, threatened, and these are real threats, not just some BS in passing threat. And that puts them in shell shock. That affects them. My youngest kid was 5 at the time, and he still has nightmares waking up saying, I thought they were going to come kill us. And that's the part that's gut wrenching. That's the part where you feel as a parent like I can't protect my kids, not just physically, but emotionally too. And so that's been the toughest part, I think, of all of it.
I got to throw one more person under the bus here.
All right.
Chanel Helm with Black Lives Matter Louisville. She's
Yeah.
the one that posted all of your addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses of all the officers involved in this. She's the one that doxed all you guys. But lo and behold, somebody puts out her phone number so that they could get something done, and all of a sudden she's got a problem with that.
Yeah, she said what was the wording she used? She said that this threatens my family. It puts threats on me, or it's dangerous for us. How
How
could
much more
somebody do that?
hypocritical could you be? I
Yeah.
mean, what a two-faced. Okay, I'm tired of bitching about
Okay.
this.
Well, now
Good Lord.
I just want people to understand the impact. I mean,
Yeah.
to this day, are you still receiving what you consider to be credible threats against you and your family?
I don't know about credible because, like I said, there's been nobody following. So, Breonna Taylor's family got almost $20 million total. It's it's a lot easier to take a good hit out on somebody when you've got money as opposed to when you don't. So the fear of that unknown, that's the key. That's the thing. Are they being patient? Or have they wiped their hands of it? Have they moved on? Nobody knows because nobody's tracked their finances, nobody's tracked their movements, nobody's tracked their calls, any of that. So we don't know about the credible threats. There's still plenty of times where a weird car will come by our house. We're far away. And so, but there's still times where something will be suspicious or crazy, and your mind automatically goes into that hyper vigilant mode of protection and of, hey, back up, let's not do that, let's not go here. The ability to just go to my own hometown that I grew up in and lived my whole life and walk around the mall with my family, that's pretty much done. So there's just all these peripheral things other than just a threat. Those threats have caused a ripple effect out that have just changed our lives in so many ways.
What for a 5-year-old to be affected by that? Shame on all these jackasses that are doing it.
Well, they do it because they know in the current environment they can get away with it and that there's
Yep.
no accountability for it.
Right.
The minute there's accountability for it, the minute you get somebody in a position that says, look, right, left, middle, doesn't matter to me. The law's the law, the facts are the facts. It's like, can you imagine going into a hospital and a doctor? It's like Reagan joked, when he was shot, he said, I hope you all are Republicans. But real doctors, people who are compassionate about what they do, they don't care. In fact, they don't care if you're a victim or a suspect or whatever else. They care because you're a human life, and that's what you take an oath to do is to protect life. First rule, the Hippocratic Oath, doctor, do no harm. So but I want to kind of finish up talking about you have now been going out and talking. What when you have these interviews, whether it's with the media or whether it's with these groups or you're talking to cops, where does that paradigm shift happen for them? When do they kind of reach that aha moment that go, what we've been told is not what the real truth is?
It doesn't take long because from the very beginning, those very early things. Once you start getting into the meat and potatoes of the warrant and what happened that night, um, because everybody has it stuck in their head that she was asleep in bed, we were at the wrong house, all those really easy things. Um, but I think the aha moment doesn't happen then with officers anyway. Maybe with media, the aha moment happens to these officers when I tell them the betrayal of the department and the city and what they need to watch out for and the way they need to protect themselves and cover their assets. I think that's when that light bulb comes on and goes, holy crap, this could be me. And that's the whole point of this. I go out and tell them, this could be you. Here's what you got to do to protect yourself. Here's some steps you can take to avoid some of the pitfalls that I went through.
So, what are a couple of pieces of advice? We have a lot of cops that listen to this, a lot of
Yeah,
people who are in law enforcement or going into law enforcement. What's your parting advice?
man, I would put your stuff in a revocable trust. That way, it's very hard to find your location. It's hard to get doxxed. I use Officer Privacy, officerprivacy.com. I use him. Um, Great. He's a little more expensive than the others, but still, it's only $20 a month. But it's the way they do it. It's a former officer, retired cop who started this, and he knows what to look for. He knows what's important to police, and um, and he's one that I've just kind of taken to. I don't get anything from him, but I promote him everywhere I go because I think it's important for these guys to have their information scrubbed off the internet. Um, because the harder you make it for these people, the easier it is on you. And those are two of the main things. Then I say, once you go through one of these issues, you treat this like your own case file because you are your own best advocate. Nobody's going to fight for you like you fight for you. And unfortunately, what we do when we go out here, we protect lives. We fight people we don't know. We're willing to die for people. But then when we get accused of something, when they're attacking us off the street, when they're attacking us administratively, what do? We cower down. We don't know what to do. No, that's when you've got to be proactive. That's when you got to get your side out because nobody's going to push for you like you. And I think that's important. Document everything. And they've got to document because your administrators will lie to you. Your courts will lie to you. And if you have all this documented, if your state allows you to do the one person recording, I recorded everything. So I've got stuff that I've had people in a corner because I'm like, no, this is what you said. And so I just advise them to be their own best advocate. You got to fight for what you believe in and take your family's mental health into consideration. That's the huge thing. Guys are scared to get help. But like I said earlier, your families haven't been through this stuff. And you probably haven't been through this stuff as a person. So you probably need some mental health too. Go talk to a counselor, get some help. Don't just cower up and go in a ball.
I tell you what, man, it's it's been an honor having you here on the show. We absolutely wanted to show or have you tell your side of the story so we can get all the truth out there rather than all this rhetoric that people are making up. But what you what you sacrifice for your community, first of all, and the sacrifices that your family have made, nobody should have to ever go through that. So,
Yep.
it's easy to throw that word hero around here for somebody to put up with the crap that you do and still have the positive attitude that you have. To be quite honest with you, I think a lot of that has to do with your Christian upbringing. My dad was a pastor also, so we have that in common. We grew up in kind of strict households, but it instilled a sense of values and a sense of honor and a sense of oath, loyalty, and taking an oath and living up to that oath. We got to throw out a shout out to Wayne Stinnett with police officer in Oklahoma that made the introduction between you and I. Wayne has done
Great
the
guy.
same with a couple other folks that we've already had on the show and some that we're going to have in the future. So thank you, Wayne, for this introduction. I think I'm starting to lose my voice here. Good Lord.
You are. We're all both hawking up lungs.
I know
We're
it.
going to be talking like Dan Murphy's Kevin. Go fuck yourself. You got to
Yeah.
listen to that episode. It's out this week, or out the first week of last week of November. It's out right now as we talk about this. Hey, I want to ask you one final question before we close this up. Even in your darkest days, you talk about getting mental health. Even in your darkest days, did you ever consider hurting yourself?
No,
Why
no.
not?
Good.
I just, well, my family, number one, why would I do that to them? But I have more respect for human life than that. And, there's a greater reason we're here, and it's not just to make money. It's not just to have fun. And, I want to capitalize on that as much as I can and not throw it away.
So, if people would like to book you, have you talk, what's the easiest way for everybody to find you and get a hold of you?
Just my email, john@sergeantmattingly.com, and sergeant's just SGT. So it's john@sgtmattingly, MATTINGLY.com.
We'll have that on our website too. And I want to remind people you can go find this book on Amazon and some other places, but it's called 12 Seconds in the Dark, a police officer's firsthand account of the Breonna Taylor raid. And, I know we'll get some grief for this because we always do, because when you do something controversial, but if
Mhm.
people will sit back and just take it with an open mind and say, What did you learn today that you did not know prior to this podcast? What can you do now to use this information to change how you view the narrative that has been given to you before? And is it accurate or not? Sometimes the narrative is correct, sometimes it's not. The bad problem about social media and media is it's all about shaping the narrative. It's about getting, like you say, getting the narrative out first. So I think your ideas about doing that, being your own advocate. We've got to have more people do that. Yeah, you can't go into Bucker mentality when stuff's happening. You've got to advocate for yourself and for your fellow cops that are out there.
And our listeners know that we will call bullshit
Oh yeah.
on police officers that do wrong. That's not one of the case. This is not the case here.
We have intentionally, Murph, and you know who I'm talking about too. There's been a couple we will never allow to be on this podcast
Right.
because they were pieces of shit. They soiled their badge. They disgraced the profession. No way we would ever give those guys an audience, not even to hear from them or say, well, what lesson can we learn? Because when you meet them and talk with them, we had one guy go, I'm podcast gold. What do you mean? And then he goes on to talk about how he sold drugs for and ran interference for a cartel organization and went to prison for 12 years. Yeah, you're not making it on this podcast, pal. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's close out by saying, hey, first of all, you guys stay safe. Obviously, watch your back, watch your six. Anything we can ever do for you, do not hesitate to reach out and let us know.
Absolutely.
We'll put your book up on our book page. Again, 12 Seconds in the Dark, a police officer's firsthand account of the Breonna Taylor raid. This is your chance to get the facts. And if you guys have a discussion issue, you guys know how to reach us. Go to our web or go to our fan page and go to our group and put your comments there. We'll engage with you on discussions. Just one rule: keep it civil. If you think we're wrong, then tell us how we're wrong. If you think we're right, then tell us how we're right. But do not get into name calling or digressing. It's not that we'll nuke you. I'm not going to just respond to it.
All right.
All right.
There you go.
So, hey, thank you guys once again. Don't go anywhere. You guys hang on for just a second. Everybody else, stay tuned for the debrief. I'm telling you, if your mind isn't changed by this, if you haven't seen how a narrative is constructed by the media
Mm-hmm.
and perpetrated, I can't help you. We have to get back to the point, Steve, where we critically think, to where we make our own decisions, we gather additional facts, but simply relying on a news outlet to give you the information and saying that must be true. Every news outlet, doesn't matter, liberal, conservative, and in the middle, they have a point of view, and that point of view comes across in the way they report things. So to hear it, here's the thing I took away from this. After all of this stuff done, John Mattingly, like you say, the only person other than Breonna Taylor was killed. That's tragic, but you know who's responsible for it? The piece of shit behind her that fired the shot at the cops.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
that's who responsible for starting all of this that went on. And he lied about what he said he did. He didn't help her out. And this douchebag is on the phone 2 days later after his quote girlfriend, the one he cared about so much that he laid her on the ground, that he was tending to her, already having phone sex from the jail 2 days later.
Oh, it's just horrible. It's horrible. And the things that John Mattingly's family has to suffer through, grown individuals, the accusations of racism, which I think if you listen to his story, have been put to rest. You know, there were
Oh,
special interest groups.
let's put a finer point on that, Murph. Tell them. I mean, people heard, but let's put a fine point on it.
Well, yeah, and I love it because they say, and I love it because of my own personal story, but, you know, they're saying, oh, this is all racially motivated. Well, let's see, who is John's son-in-law
He's
that
black
that his daughter dated throughout high school, and now they're married and they have two children, two
since she
biracial
was
children.
13. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you're calling this guy racist when he has a black son-in-law kind of, you know, counteracts that accusation. And I say it's similar to my personal situation because I've been accused of going after Hispanic people when I was a police officer because that was a racial issue. People not knowing that my two daughters are Colombian immigrants, that we adopted them from Colombia and they're now U.S. citizens. So it shows you where people will say any freaking thing that comes to their mind to try to support their little thing. The special interest groups involved in this, the potential assaults on the family by motorcycle gangs. I mean, just you got to listen to everything. But this all goes back to what you've heard us say time and time again to our regular listeners: is don't believe what the media tells you. Do not accept what they tell you as 100% truth. It's not like the old days where you had Walter Cronkite got on there and just would tell you the story and then you made up your own mind what you thought the outcome was. They try to lead us all into believing what they say. We all know that they will sensationalize any story because the bottom line is they're trying to get more viewers, which leads to more advertisers, which leads to more money in their profit margin. So our challenge, Javi and I say this at every presentation we do around the world. We say it here on the podcast with Martin Morgan, is when you hear a story, don't let them tell you what to think. Go do your own research, and then you make the determination as to what really happened. No better proof than an interview with John Mattingly.
No, and I think that's one of the things that we have. Look, we looked at cutting things back. People said they want it longer. Why? Because this way we get into the details. And I think,
right.
Will we become the largest podcast on the internet? No, we're comfortable knowing that's not going to be the case. But I'll tell you what, compared to all the other true crime podcasts that are out there, everybody else is repeating stories. Very few, if any, and I can probably count on one hand, maybe three fingers, the number of podcasts who actually go out and interview the people involved in the actual event. So if you want first person now, you may say, I don't believe him. That's okay. You may not, don't take anything we say as a fact. Right. Nothing we say is a fact. It's an opinion. We have an opinion based upon what we've heard. But when you hear John talk, and to me, the biggest thing is the way he got thrown under the bus and he got targeted. But here's the guy, as we asked him, have you ever been charged with anything? Nope. Indicted for anything? Nope. Federal, state, local? Nope. Civil rights charges? Nope. Nothing John did. Nothing has risen to the level, and this is with a Department of Justice that is favorable to indicting police officers for if they can, right? Yep. He has passed that kind of scrutiny, but yet who's the one that's living, basically you have to watch 360 what's going on, watch his back every day. Who's the one that had to pick up his family after only being in their home for 5 weeks and move?
I don't know if we mentioned this, but and just so you know, for our listeners, when we interview a guest, if they don't have a good quality microphone and headset, we send them the equipment, and it's theirs to keep. When I sent them to John, I had to send it to an address where he doesn't live. He and I don't really know each other before we did the podcast together. That's the level of security he has to go to where he can't even tell a brother law enforcement officer what his real address is, and I would not ask. Nope. But that's what the guy's suffering through still to this day.
Well, and I actually went back and edited out a part where he said something that would have narrowed down a radius, let's put it that way. And I went through it, and after we said that, I said, no, look, I'll take it out. So I took it out. And because we don't want to give anybody any idea where he's at. And how terrible is that? Yeah. How terrible is that you have to live that way and you did nothing wrong.
And all because he was trying to help his own community as a public servant and the police department. If you get a chance, check out his book, 12 Seconds in the Dark. I got it on Amazon in the Kindle version. It's an excellent read.
Sergeant John Mattingly, obviously that's up on our website, 12 Seconds in the Dark. This is the real story behind what happened. I mean, it's his, but he also has access to documents, other things. There's proof into what, it's not just, hey, here's what I said. Here's things that back up what I said too.
It's a tragedy that Breonna Taylor is no longer with us. This is certainly not an assault against her. We just want you to know what the truth is. It was needless. Her death was needless because of a spineless coward that she was dating at the time.
Yep. Had he not pulled the trigger, this is my belief. Had he not pulled the trigger, everybody would have walked away alive
Yep.
and unscathed that night.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that brings an end. So let's bring this episode to an end. Again, we just got to tell you guys, thanks for allowing us just to, talk about this a little bit, because I think part of the thing that makes this podcast different is we get into the issues. I mean, we actually talk about what's going on, and look, we call out bullshit when we hear it. If it's not the right thing, we call it out. But it's hard to listen to this story and not be affected by it, by everybody, right? Nobody needs to die.
Right. And we've got our next guest, another controversial topic. You got to tune in next week to hear what the next one is.
And look, this involves. Anyway, let's save it for next week. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So anyway, guys, if you like this, head on over to Apple and Spotify, hit those 5 stars. Also head on over to Game of Crimes podcast. More information about the show. We also put the book there. Follow us on that thing they call social media, at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. Also go hit our Facebook fan group. Just type in Game of Crimes fans. You'll bring up the fan page or fan group, and Sandy Salvato will give you entrance as long as you just even get close on a couple questions, right? So, and then the final thing, where do I have to be? Where do you need to be? Where do we all need to be? You need to be on Patreon, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Got a lot of great, look, we go to a lot of extent to provide a lot of different types of content. I think we provide 7 to 8 different things per month, depending on what level you're at, but we provide 7 to 8 different things per month. And guys, we put a lot of heart into this too. We're not the pros like some of the other ones you might listen to, but let me tell you what, you will hear stuff you will never hear anywhere else. You'll be challenged in a way you've never been challenged anywhere else. And guess what? You're going to have fun like you don't have anywhere else. I mean, this is like Disney, the unwoke version of Disney. I'm just talking about the good old days of Disney where you went there and you rode rides, you ate too much, and you threw up at the end.
And hey, I'm in Orlando, so I mean, it's the happiest place in the freaking world, right?
The happiest place in the world. All right, guys. Well, thank you once again, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you guys once again for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the original, unadulterated Game of Crimes.